Now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
All right, you're welcome back. It is Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 10 o'clock this evening. Coming up in the football show, we'll hear from Jimmy Dunn, the Burnley defender, about a bright start to the Premier League season for him. We'll also have some more reflection on the Republic of Ireland's difficult week with Noel King. That all coming after 9 o'clock. But we want to talk GAA because events, dear boy, are happening at a rate of knots at the moment in terms of whether the inter-county season, the inter-county championship is going to go ahead. We're, less than 48 hours away now from the start and the resumption of the Allianz Leagues. To talk about this, we're joined on the line by the journalist Michael Verney and also by the former Mayo and Armagh footballer Billy Joe Padden. Evening, lads.
How are you, Nathan? Good evening.
Michael, you might run us through as much as you can what's been going on over the past probably 12 hours at this stage, because it does seem as though this is moving quite quickly now, as is the case with the rest of the country in all parts of life, but particularly with the GAA.
Yeah, it's moving at a rate of knots, Nathan. Like if you turn your phone off for a day, God only knows what updates you'll have when you turn it back on. And I suppose the most relevant stuff is probably what's come out in the last couple of hours, and that was Leo Varadkar speaking to Matt Cooper on Today FM, and I suppose he's happy. He's happy that the GAA continue at the moment, particularly with league starting this weekend. And just a couple of direct quotes from him. He said, "I think ultimately that is going to be a decision for the GAA. They're the right ones to make it." That was when he was asked if it was feasible for the GAA season to get underway as cases kind of skyrocketed. Then he says himself, "I do think it's feasible for inter-county elite sport to continue. We see international competitions, for example, continue, and I wouldn't like to see Irish teams or Irish athletes having to pull out of international competitions. But it is difficult for the GAA. I suppose this is an important point. It is difficult for the GAA in particular because they are amateur athletes. They can't be bubbled or cocooned in the way that Premiership players can be, or even provincial rugby players can be. But it can be done, and it obviously has to be done with no spectators." So that was kind of with regards to this weekend. But then when he was asked whether GAA would continue at level 5, he said whether it would mean the end of championship if it went to level 5. He said it would mean the end of a championship, which obviously is in contradiction to what NEFIT had said last week. They had said that reports last week had said that the GAA championship would continue even if it was level 5. So the only thing I will say on that is the bulk of the interview was obviously not about the GAA. The last couple of minutes was about the GAA, and he only just said that it would mean the end for the GAA. Whether he's unaware of the NEFIT, what the recommendations that NEFIT had made, so I wouldn't.
Well, also we should point out, I guess, and maybe I'm flipping it back, is that they are just recommendations from NEFIT, and as we've previously seen from the government, they don't necessarily go with them. So for level 5, there was an appendix that said that professional sport, senior inter-county and horse racing behind closed doors could continue even on level 5. That's the recommendation from NEFIT. But the government, if we do go to level 5 over the coming weeks, could take an entirely different view. So maybe the certainty I think that was there, Michael, last week when people read that was, well, actually, we can now plan with as much of a degree of certainty as you can that an inter-county season will go ahead. And Leo Varadkar, not for the first time, going on a little bit of a solo run perhaps, I think it feels as though it puts a lot of doubt as to whether we will see certainly the end of a championship season.
It definitely does. Of course, it puts a lot of doubt into people's minds after having not certainty, because you can't have any certainty at the moment. But I think when those NEFIT recommendations were made, those guidelines were kind of given, managers would have been planning and players would have been planning that they were going to have inter-county football in hurling regardless, and it doesn't look like that's the case now.
Billy Joe, this follows on from the news this morning that the GPA this week sent out all their members a questionnaire for their thoughts and their views about the return of the inter-county season. It's understood the GPA deeply concerned about the welfare of its players. They asked were county boards implementing the COVID-19 inter-county return to play protocols, and also asked them straight out which of the following options reflects your opinion for the upcoming season. 1, you wanted to proceed. 2, only if the implementation of the COVID-19 protocols is improved. 3, I don't want the season to proceed. So it does seem as though, again, it has stepped forward, and the GPA now are being quite proactive about getting to a stage where the players' views will be reflected, and you would have to expect be respected by the GAA if they come back overwhelmingly saying they don't want this to happen.
that's what the GPA are there for, to fight for player welfare throughout the country. And I think that's the findings of that questionnaire will be very, very interesting. I think that generally, though, and I only speak for myself, and this is a former player, that you've probably been looking forward to this all through the summer. You've enjoyed maybe your club championship. You've developed that bond with the players you play with at inter-county level as well, and it's an opportunity to go out and achieve something. At the same time, they're aware of the uncertainty that's there in the future. But as a player, all you can do is prepare yourself in the best possible way. Take each game as it comes, and it's the mantra of many managers to just not look beyond the next game. I think that's definitely the case in this environment at the minute. And it'll probably come down to what our players react best in that situation. But I do think it's important, and I'm glad to hear the GPA are talking about it, in that you have 32 counties, hurling and football squads. Are each county implementing the guidelines as it should be to ensure the safety of the players, not just the players, but their families at home, the people they work with day in, day out, because that is the difference. There's no cocoon in there. GAA players are exposed to much more people in the community.
I don't know when we're going to get the results of this survey, Michael, but have you heard anything or got any sense of what the necessary percentage is for the GPA to come out and say our players don't want this? Like, is 30% enough, or is it a straightforward 51-49 decision?
Yeah, I wonder, is it going to be like GAA Congress, where they have to get up? The percentage could change from year to year. Yeah, no, it will be interesting to see. Like, we obviously have had some county players come out. I think John Heslin was probably one of the most high-profile ones, the Westmeath footballer, saying, like, how long is this commentary of, that the GAA, or people need the GAA championships to go ahead? How long is that narrative going to continue when numbers are kind of skyrocketing around the country? I think Stephen Campbell, the Armagh footballer, kind of had an interesting tweet earlier on today. And I think this is kind of relevant, and I think county players, more so than club players, while they're obviously coming from different clubs and different families, and there's probably more of a mix, and they're contacted with more people, there's not going to be like mass congregations after county games. The teams aren't going to be going out and mixing with people, maybe like clubs were after county finals. So I think that's definitely a positive on it.
Why wouldn't they be? When a team gets knocked out second week of the championship, are they not going to go out and have a few drinks?
I think with what we've seen a couple of weeks ago in particular, with Blackrock and a few other clubs, I think people will be well warned now at this stage. Like it'd be a very, very foolish thing to be doing at this stage, particularly as a county player in a really, really high profile, when you see kind of what happened with clubs. But just back to Stephen Campbell, it was a contradiction maybe to what John Heston had said. He just said, I've avoided a COVID outbreak in work, the infamous house party cluster prior to our club championship semi-final again with Armagh, because I acted responsible, made sacrifices and chose to drive alone. Having witnessed 2 different outbreaks at club and county, I don't feel I am at risk of transmitting COVID on the field of play. In fact, the National Football League and Ulster Championship is the one thing that has kept most of us going. The emotional stress I have felt over the last 6 months is something I've never experienced, and now with some light at the end of the tunnel, we have an opportunity to give joy to a nation that is at breaking point. In my opinion, to take that away would be a catastrophe. So it's obviously, there was a flip side, and there was varying opinions kind of flying around last night when people talked about going to level 4 and then going to level 5. But that's definitely kind of a different maybe opinion on it. One thing I would say is, with minor championships and under 20 championships, I have to say I think they're falling in kind of a dangerous category, because you have the under 17 championship. You're obviously going to have a lot of guys in school who are coming into contact with an awful lot of different people in a given day. And then with under 20s, I know the Wexford under 20 hurlers, I think they had a handful of positives that were related to people in college on their panel. And it just gets very, very messy at those 2 particular grades. And I wouldn't be surprised if those grades are sacrificed over the coming weeks. I do think senior inter-county, you are dealing with adults, you are dealing with people who are probably less likely to be in college. The few that would be in college are probably doing things remotely as well. So I do think there is less of a risk at senior than at minor and under 20. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see those championships possibly cancelled or postponed over the coming weeks, because I do think they're kind of high risk categories.
Billy Joe, it has been interesting looking at the response from players, and there's no doubt there's a divergence in views, as you would expect there to be, from players who feel, actually, I don't want to put myself at risk, to players who feel, actually, you know what, I've done the right thing. I've trained hard, I want this opportunity, I've done everything right, I intend to keep doing everything right. I guess the one other side is the players who maybe are afraid to speak out. And the one thing we always hear throughout this is personal responsibility. Do the right thing yourself for those around you. And the pressure that will come to play for your inter-county team. If this GPA survey comes back and 60% say we're happy to go ahead, if we survive between level 3 and level 4 and games are happening, but you're not quite sure, or you have somebody vulnerable at home, but this pressure that we always hear about that is there to go and play and represent your county is underneath the whole time. Do you think that is an issue? Do you think that's a factor that the players might well be concerned about going out to play, but that they sort of feel like they've no choice?
I think it's possible that it's an issue. I think in the dynamic of any squad, you have younger people and maybe not people that are not established in the team or in the squad, and they may feel that this is an opportunity for them. They're in the county squad, that if they opt out because they have the concerns that you've outlined, that they may not get that opportunity again, and that's not right. I think that you would hope that over the last number of months, and I know inter-county teams were not meant to be training for a lot of that, but they were in contact some way, whether it was through Zoom meetings or whatever, that there was that open dialogue between players themselves and coaches, so that you had that, I suppose, environment that players felt comfortable to opt out. Because I think at the start of this whole thing, it's been so important that pressure was taken away from players if possible, for that reason, because it's such an extraordinary thing, and you do not want anyone to feel pressures and then have that worry on top of them of going home and maybe bringing a virus back to a vulnerable person. And if you are in that mindset, you're not going to enjoy playing your game, and you're not going to play at your best, and you're probably not going to be a great attribute to your squad. So I just hope that each player that feels like that has that support, and I suppose that's a reason why the questionnaire probably will give that opportunity for people to say that. And if the numbers are high, well then we'll know that there's a broad feeling throughout squads throughout the country of fear generally.
Croke Park right now, I don't think have an official response to what Leo Varadkar said. The last communication they had was what came from Neffet, and they have an advisor, I think, on one of the boards around Neffet that is related to sport, so they're going with that. Obviously it is up to the government to make a decision. In terms of the GAA's view on this then, Michael, I guess one of the questions is, if they do cancel it now, what are the conditions where they can resume? What are the conditions where it's acceptable to play football and hurling? Is there a number? Like, how do they make the decision if they stop in October that they can suddenly resume in February, March? Or are you just pushing it back and hoping for the best?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter, Nathan, to be honest with you. I don't think, it's very hard to put some sort of a number on it, or when they will come back, or do they take a break, a blanket kind of break for 3 or 4 weeks and then resume again? That's very, very difficult. So it's kind of hard to know what they're going to do and what their stance is going to be on it. Like, even down in Wexford at the moment, Wexford have kind of 6 positive tests between their hurling and football squad. So I think the football squad, a lot of it is related to one club in particular, and post-county final congregations, so after finals or whatever. But they went through this rapid testing programme that the GAA have put in place, and by all accounts, I was chatting to the Wexford chairman last night, Derek Kent, and he was delighted with how it was all done, and it was done really, really quickly. And the players, the 2 hurlers who have tested positive, will now isolate for 14 days, and to the best of my knowledge, will still be eligible to play their Leinster semi-final against Galway on Halloween night, and the 4 footballers are doing the same. And I think the rest are pretty much okay to return to training. That's one of the things, obviously, the GAA have done to try, and they're really, in fairness to them, they're doing everything they possibly can to allow this to go ahead and put these things in places. The results of the GPA survey will be very, very interesting, because, as you say, people who have maybe wanted to remain anonymous have and don't want to put anything out there on social media get their chance to say what they want to say. I think if there's more than if there's more than 50% think the championships should be called off, I think that would have a lot of weight to it. I think if it's anything probably less than maybe 30%, maybe less weight, and people would say that those players that don't want to take part probably have the choice probably not to take part. I've heard going around a lot of the different squads, I've heard very few, and I asked the manager, any manager I was chatting to, I asked the same question: have many guys pulled away because of COVID? And I'd say the 7 or 8 that I were chatting to, nobody had pulled away because of COVID or professional reasons or anything like that. Jack McCaffrey obviously is one in Dublin, and we're led to believe that was the reason he pulled away. But privately or publicly, nobody has really pulled away, and maybe high-profile players will pull away over the coming days, and maybe that will set the wheels in motion. But it hasn't happened yet, so it'd be interesting to see what stance Croke Park take on it. I don't expect comment at the moment on it, because there's probably a few more things have to happen before it goes to level 5, and I'd say they'll probably be backing the NEFID recommendations that it does proceed at level 5. But yeah, it's, as I said, you don't want to turn off your phone or anything like that.
No.
You could go to bed waiting for a Division 1 league football match on Saturday and wake up and the world could be a very, very different place.
And Billy Joe, what Michael touched upon there as well with players, it's interesting to hear that actually, talking to county managers, players haven't been stepping away. And we spoke to any amount of county players over the course of summer who just could not wait to get back out there. But this is changing very quickly. The numbers are changing very, very quickly. And we just had a phone call in from someone who says they're an employer of an inter-county player, saying, what about the potential impact on other employees? Players might not congregate with other players, but they're going back into the world on a Monday and back into work. Is there any consideration being given to the people that they work with? And these are the other pressures, I guess, that are going to come on players over the coming days. You got a visitor there, Billy Joe, so I'll put this to Michael. That these are the other unknowns, even still, are what will employers say if everybody is pretty much on lockdown, yet the players are going out, congregating in and around dressing rooms. I don't even know the practicalities of. I hear the Kerry players are driving to Monaghan. Are they going to be allowed to get on a team bus?
Yeah, a lot of those things are kind of up in the air. I was chatting to John Kiley, the Limerick manager, the other day, and in their base in Rathkeel, I think they have 4 separate kind of changing areas, and they've got a new kind of ventilated system there that's basically pumping kind of fresh air around, or maybe not fresh air, but it's making it as healthy as possible and as sanitized as possible. Whether a team can get on a bus and go travel 3 or 4 hours is another story. That's obviously far from ideal. But yeah, there is a lot of concerns from employers, from family members, I'm sure. But I am also hearing from nearly everybody I'm chatting to. I was chatting to Niall Carew yesterday. He's just in with Carlow, new Carlow manager. Absolutely cannot wait to get going. Cannot wait to get going. Any other managers, most players I've been talking to, I've heard very little reservations from players or managers. The majority have been absolutely mad for it. John Kiley last night, when we started talking about the Clare game on Sunday week, you could just see a little bit of fire in his eyes, just getting ready, because he's been waiting for this and planning for this so long. It'd be interesting. Those survey results will be very, very interesting. And obviously, as you say, it's not just the players involved or the squad involved. There are employers, there are family that are kind of connected in all of this as well, and they're right to have worries. I would be placing trust in the players to be acting responsibly and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and within the workplace as well, obviously, to be doing what they're supposed to be doing to make sure that any possibility of a spread is minimised as much as possible.
Yeah, I think an awful lot of people want this to happen. You're right. Looking at the messages that have been coming in all evening, as we've probably been quite downbeat about it, Billy Joe, an awful lot of people saying, actually, this is going to be the longest winter. Anything that brings a little bit of joy to people over the course of that. And I even found it myself on a Saturday afternoon when you have 4 Premier League matches back to back. At one time it might have seemed like overkill. Now you're thinking, geez, the day passes nice and quickly having it there, and you'd hate for it to be gone. In terms of the enjoyment factor, like when we're talking about Kerry players driving up in the cars by themselves to Monaghan, in and out of the showers as quick as you can after the game, don't have a team huddle before the match, all the little various bits of advice that maybe this time next week is the time to have the conversation about how much they enjoy it when they've experienced it, when they've gone out and played the league games and seen what it's like, because you can imagine, it's going to be as close to normal. It'll be close to what the club game was like. Again, because things have escalated, players may look after a week and go, where's the buzz? Is this really, am I just out there for everybody's entertainment? Am I getting the buzz out of this I wanted?
I think the National League it will be different to the Championship in that regard, because the long distances of travelling, that's going to be hard to enjoy. But at the same time, sometimes you just want to get out in the field as quickly as you can, get the ball thrown in and take it from there. And I think when the Championship comes around, you'll hope the distances for travelling, whether with players still have to travel on their own, that will be reduced, and that sort of impact. I have heard some players that are still playing complaining about staying out in the field during bad weather conditions and how that impacts your enjoyment of the game. But I think once you take those sort of freak elements out with the real long journeys, I think that players will enjoy it again, because as we've heard from them, any of the players I've talked to are really keen to get back in and play the games. And then purely, as you said, on a selfish level, like, I can't wait for Mayo and Galway on Sunday. It feels like I've been starved of GAA action for far too long. And I'm sure there are loads of people around the country that feel the same way, even though whenever you bump into anyone on the street, they're kind of like ourselves and kind of find it hard to think that the season will be completed, but at the same time, they're just going to try and enjoy every game for as long as we have them.
You're
just
right,
on that, Nathan, as well, like, I was involved in the club championship in Offaly and for a couple of games, and it was different beforehand, but once you got to like half an hour before the game and you were in your warm-up, it felt the exact same. The intensity on the pitch was the exact same. If anything, you can hear your sideline a bit more, you can hear your players a bit more. The intensity, I didn't think, had dropped at all. Once the final whistle blows, it's completely different again, because you're basically picking up your gear bag and jumping in your car. But as regards the actual action between the white lines, there was definitely no drop in buzz or intensity for me. No, definitely not. And I don't think inter-county players will think that either. It's going to be different before and after, but I think between the white lines it will be the same.
No, it's really interesting to listen to the points you're making, Michael, because I kind of would have thought when I saw that GPA survey that this isn't looking good, but by the sounds of what you're saying, it'd be a surprise if it was over 50% saying, unless there is that huge cohort of people who feel they can't speak up and an anonymous survey, they can actually give their true opinions. But it does feel from what you're saying that actually the players want to get out there. I'd
be surprised, Nathan, being honest with you, if there's more than 4 or 5 within more squads. That's been honest with you. And as Billy Joe said there, or Willie Joe, sorry, as he said,
he's Billy Joe.
Billy Joe, sorry. Listen, it's a good problem to have if I'm calling him Willie Joe, in fairness.
Yeah.
But as he said, you're taking a lot of problems out. Like, once the league is over, there's no big 4-hour trips or anything like that. There's a lot of logistical problems kind of taken out of it. And by championship time, we're gonna have hubs. We'll have Thurles, we'll have Croke Park, we'll have these bigger venues that they'll be travelling to, and they'll be know where they're travelling to, they'll know where they're getting food and everything like that. But I would be surprised if there was more than, if you're talking about a panel of 36, I'd be surprised if more than 1/6 of that squad was against having a championship. That's just my personal opinion, and from chatting to players and managers down over the last couple of weeks.
The other big complication, Billy Joe, is actually when players are testing positive. And Michael mentioned down in Wexford, 4 footballers, 2 hurlers. The footballers are playing Limerick in the Allianz League this weekend. Like, what is the number that gets a game postponed? And are the GAA willing to allow those games to be postponed? We're talking about an All-Ireland final before Christmas. Like, is there a cut-off point? Because, listen, we all say, yeah, go ahead with Limerick against Wexford. What if it's All-Ireland semi-final week and Dublin are missing 4 key players? Is that game going to go ahead?
I think that the GAA, and I would imagine the GAA have a number in their heads, and I think they'd probably have maybe kind of hinted at that with the various county boards. I think that the GAA will be putting, not pressure, but would be putting the onus on counties to field a team. And if that means that you have to bring players from an under-20 squad so long as they're obviously within the bubble and within the testing regime, that they can participate, I think there'll be an absolute emphasis on fulfilling fixtures. Because I suppose one of the key concerns that I have, particularly about the finish of the National League, and even as you get through the Championship, is that the competitive disadvantage that some counties may be at, should they lose a bunch of players, or should they lose out because another team played a county that had lost a bunch of players, particularly for the last 2 rounds of the league. It's very, the Fermanagh thing is very, very difficult on them to prepare properly for that game. And that's something that will be a concern should you get to the latter stages of the championships and a team has progressed and have maybe been a bit fortunate in terms of playing teams that have had to, isolate players, and big names have missed out on games because of that.
Enda McGinley was on OTB AM this morning, Billy Joe, and he was only half joking when he said the worst thing that could happen for public health advice would be for Mayo to win an All-Ireland final. And you did remind me when you said Mayo against Galway this weekend. We've experienced every emotion possible over the last 6 months, except for good old-fashioned Mayo heartbreak. It's coming back, hopefully. Lads, great stuff.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan.
We'll talk to you again soon. Michael Verney there and Billy Joe Padden. And the 2020 GAA Football All-Ireland Senior Championships are almost here. And to mark it, SuperValu and OTB are calling on GAA fans across the country to support where you're from. Are you the country's most devoted superfan? Well, we want you to send us your videos showing just how much of a superfan you and your family are. Send us your 20-second videos of a pre-match speech, your pre-match setup at home, or live match reactions. Get them into us on social media using the hashtag #WhereYou'reFrom or on WhatsApp to 087 9180 180. That is 087 9180 180. We'll choose a best entry every Friday during the championship, and each winner gets a €200 voucher for a SuperValu and also the chance to star in SuperValu Superfan Series, a fly-on-the-wall peek inside the homes of dedicated supporters around the country. It is all with thanks to SuperValu, proud sponsors of the GAA Football All-Ireland Senior Championship. See facebook.com/SuperValu Ireland for more.
Off the ball on News Talk.
On tomorrow's Pat Kenny Show, what to expect when you're expecting the new virtual antenatal class. The naked mathematician is